Hi and welcome back to Petite Wreath Boutique. Today I'm showing you how to make this football themed wreath using the Poof method, which creates so much volume in our wreath. We will use beautiful green and brown deco mesh and themed ribbon. If you are new to my channel, please consider to subscribe to not miss out on any new craft videos. So first we go through all the material we need. This sign, it says football season, a 14-inch wreath frame, mesh, this brown one and green one. Cleaners, you will need 20 total. Zip ties in green, 6 inches. Felt to cover the back. 4 inches zip ties to cover the felt to the back. Some jute cord to create a hanger for the wreath. Felt scratches for the sign. And ribbon. There's football themed ribbon. Super cute. This is also football themed, as you can see. And I decided last minute to do a white one, so that was the quick picture. When it comes to the tools, you will need a clip, a wire cutter, a rotary cutter, scissors. I used a pointy one for the felt in the back, and sharp ones for the ribbon, and a hot glue gun. So let's start with preparing the sign. I like to do this step first so it can dry all the way while during the whole process of making the wreath. You will need your pipe cleaners. You form a U shape. You kind of see where you want to put it down on the frame. It makes sense to have the pipe cleaners where you actually will attach it to the wreath frame. You put down a little bit of the hot glue and then you hold it down. Go over with the hot glue again and use some felt scratch to attach it. Push it down and repeat that step for the other side. Now it's time to prepare the reframe. You will need the pipe cleaners for this step. And we have 6 sections, and in each section we will attach 3 pipe cleaners. One facing towards the inner row. This is the step right now. So you will go between bar 1 and 2, attach the pipe cleaner, give it a few twists, and point it towards the inner row. And then you use the next pipe cleaner between bar 3 and 4. Same step, give it a little twist, and then point it towards the outer row. So you repeat this step until you have 18 pipe cleaners, 6 pointing towards the inner row, like the inside of the reframe, and 12 to point towards the outside of the reframe. So I wanted to show in this step that why I make the additional next step. I do put zip ties on just because I think the pipe cleaner does move a little bit too much, in my opinion, even though I try to make it as tight as I can. And this gives me just the peace of mind that the wreath stays the way it's supposed to be. So what I do, I just use the 6-inch zip tie and move it in between the pipe cleaner and the wreath frame and cut off the excessive zip tie, and that's it. This is how it's supposed to look when you're done with preparing the frame. Then we start attaching the mesh to the reframe, and as you can see, I layered two brown mesh over each other because I didn't want the reframe to be seen through the mesh. And what you do, you create a tail for the first attachment. I use around like 2 inches. You work from the inner row to the outer row. You find a pipe cleaner, you attach where you just ruffled this tail, and then you push the tail through the wreath, through the back of the wreath, and use another zip tie to attach it to make sure that this first tail, this first poof what we will create stays where it's supposed to stay. When you're done, you will have the point of the attachment with the pipe cleaner on the reframe, and from there you will measure 10 inches, and we will create 10 inches poofs for this reframe. What you do is you measure it, then you walk your fingers up, you ruffle the mesh, you hold it tight, and then you walk to the next point, the next pipe cleaner attachment on the reframe, and use the pipe cleaners to attach that poof really tightly. You continue this step, measuring 10 inches from the point of the attachment of the pipe cleaner on the reframe. Walk your fingers up to the end of this mesh, hold on tight, and attach it to the next pipe cleaner on the reframe. Once we're done to attach the loops, the poofs to the inner row, we need to go over to the outer row. What you do, you pull the mesh tightly to the closest pipe cleaner. You just pull it tight. No loops, no nothing. And twist the pipe cleaner to attach it. And on this step, I also like to attach this super tight flat mesh piece to the reframe with a zip tie. And once attached, you just turn it around and create your 10-inch loops again and go from one attached pipe cleaner to the next. So you will have 12 loops on the outer row and 6 on the inner row. And if you do the method like I do, that you double layer the mesh, you will need 2 rolls. But at the end you will only use 1, if that makes sense, because it will be a total of 360 inches, but it will be 180 on each roll. Once you're done with attaching all the loops, you need to cut off like around 2 to 3 inches of the mesh, and we will have a little tail, which we also want to hide into the wreath frame on the back. So you push the tail you just created through the the wires. And as we did it in the very beginning, you take a zip tie and attach this tail to the wreath frame. Next step is the green mesh. For this step, you cut 12 pieces by 18 inches. I used a rotary cutter for this step. You just measure the 18 inches on your mat and cut it with the rotary cutter. And then we will create little ruffles and attach it to the wreath frame. I attached 6 on the inner row, so every pipe cleaner you have. And on the outer row, I attached 6 as well, so every other. What you do, you put the curl side up. As you can see, the mesh naturally wants to curl. You roll in like 1 to 3 times, 1 inch each, to prevent them fraying. You do it on one side, use that clip to prevent it from opening up. You make the same step, repeat the step on the other side of the mesh, and then walk your fingers in the middle towards the clip. And you almost create like a little bow. And this bow, this ruffle, will be attached to the wreath frame now, as I mentioned before. So for the inner row, I used 1 ruffle for each pipe cleaner, and for the outer row, every other pipe cleaner. So let's do this again. You have the curl side up. You have 1 inch and curl it up 2 to 3 times, and then you repeat the step on the other side. Use the clip as a help so the mesh doesn't roll up on you. Walk your fingers in the middle to create a ruffle, and then have this ruffle bow put up on the wreath frame. All right, next up is to create the ribbons, and I use Pro the hand not only to make bows, but also to attach my ribbon to make life easier for me. And as I mentioned before, I made a last minute decision to add this white. Otherwise, I thought it was too brown and green heavy. I cut 6 pieces of 12 inches of this white for the outer row for the outside, and then I cut 10 inches of this white for the inside. And as you could see, I tried to layer this to save some time. And then you cut ducktails. And for this, you bend the middle, two corners together, bend the middle, and you leave the outer part long and have the inner side short. Not like I just do on this video right now. I cut it wrong. So as you can see, that is not a ducktail. You can fix it, obviously, but yeah, just remember the outside pieces need to be long and you cut into the inside, if that makes any sense. Of this green football themed ribbon, I also cut 6 pieces and 12 inches each. I only attached the green to the outside. So I used the same technique. I layer the ribbon above each other. I used a 12-inch mark on my cutting board and measure the pieces up. So technically, I have a very long ribbon piece and just bend at the 12-inch mark. Then I take a couple and create these ducktails. And with cutting the ducktails, I also cut the ribbon into the right size. So for the brown ribbon, I used it for the inner row and also for the outer row. For the inside, I used it in three times 10 inches each. And for the outside, I used 6 times 12 inches. And the same process, you bend it at the 12-inch mark and then you cut ducktails. Now to attach those ribbon bundles to the reframe, I did I did one white burlap ribbon, one football themed green ribbon, and one brown football themed ribbon. I created an X pattern with the 1.5-inch thick ribbon pieces and then put a thinner brown ribbon in the middle. I gathered it in the middle with my fingers and then attached it to the pipe cleaners, which are between two brown pieces. Earlier, we attached to the green mesh to every other piece on the outer row, and now we are attaching the ribbon bundles to the pieces which don't have a green ruffle, like a mesh ruffle. I hope that makes sense. For me, it does. Hope you can follow me. So now this is the step where I cut the white burlap ribbon and the brown ribbon into the 10-inch pieces each. This time I did the ducktails right. And there's the brown football themed ribbon. Again, 10 inches ducktails. And then to create the ribbon bundles, it's just an X pattern. The white is underneath, the brown is on top. Walk your fingers, hold the middle tight, and then attach it to the wreath frame. And here again, I only attach it to every other pipe cleaner in the inner row. Since we are done with attaching everything to the pipe cleaners, we can cut the excessive pipe cleaners off. For that step, you leave like an inch left on the pipe cleaner, cut it with the wire cutters, and create a little hook to put it into the wreath. So we are getting towards the final. Next step is to attach the sign to the wreath frame. And for that matter, you use the pipe cleaners, which we prior attached to it. You find a way through the mesh to find the wreath frame and then give it a few twists to attach the pipe cleaner to the wired wreath frame. Then you want to create a hook to be able to hang the wreath up. I use a piece of jute cord. I make sure that it's really the middle. So this time I got lucky that there's actually a pipe cleaner what points out the middle. I used the jute cord, attach it to the wreath frame with the pipe cleaner in this case, and make like little knots into the jute cord. And honestly, I like to double check if that's really the middle before I attach the felt. What's the next step? Here is the felt piece, which I cut prior out. And to attach it, I lay it down and poke holes into the felt. I like to work from one side to the other, meaning I start at the top and then put another zip tie in the bottom. So you kind of work across. Once you have the hole, you put the 4-inch zip ties through, attach it to the wired reframe. This step is not mandatory. I just like to do it to cover the bag to make sure the door doesn't get scratched. And I also think it looks a little bit more neat if you don't see the work frame. I attached like 8 of the zip ties. Once you have all of them in, you cut it with the wire cutter and turn the outstanding piece from the zip tie inside. So last step for finishing this wreath is to open up the ribbon, and you just go through the wreath and make sure that all the wrinkles are out and it kind of looks like a flower opening, if that makes sense. I feel like that's the best way to describe how the ribbon bundles should look. And that's it for today. This is how this football themed wreath comes to life. If you like that video, please give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. And if you don't feel like making it yourself, I do offer this and other creations on my website. Check it out. The link is in the description box below. See you next time. Bye.